A Vorkarian ambassador's clawed fist smashed into the table's carbon fiber top, fracturing the surface material. The human super-soldier program was finally unveiled to the Galactic Council. Crimson reptilian scales rippled down the spine of the towering lizard. Humans have violated all treaties and ethical boundaries with this super-soldier initiative. The latest aggression cannot stand. Agitated murmurs burst into fiery exclamations throughout the vaulted council chamber. Sitting still in the storm, Earth's representative maintained a stoic expression. Jerry Bennett was muscled like an Olympic athlete, augmented over decades of black operations training. He rose to his feet as furor turned to anticipation. Our soldier enhancement is defensive, designed to safeguard human colonies from predators like you. His unblinking eyes fixed on the Vorkarian. Lies! Your operatives sabotage our installations even now. The Vorkarian's forked tongue tasted the air, as if searching for fear. The room's lights glinted off Jerry's polished skull implant. He knew the scaled monster was concealing something, and he refused to let it stay buried. More than humanity's reputation was at stake now. If the Galactic Council sided against Earth, it could spark total war between mankind and the stars. Billions of human lives hung in the balance. As the meeting adjourned, the representatives filed out of the council chambers, their voices a cacophony of heated debates and whispered conspiracies. Jerry Bennett lingered, his mind still grappling with the Vorkarian ambassador's accusations. As he turned to leave, a hooded figure approached him, their movements furtive and deliberate. Jerry's hand instinctively moved to his concealed sidearm. "Who are you?" The figure pulled back her hood, revealing the scaled features of a Vorkarian female. "My name is Zara. I'm a defector from Belos Inner Circle." Jerry's eyes narrowed. "And why should I trust you?" Zara glanced around, her reptilian eyes darting to the shadows. "Not here, follow me." She led him through a series of winding corridors, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Finally, they reached a secluded room, far from prying eyes and listening devices. Zara reached into her cloak and produced a small data crystal. "This contains evidence of Belos's secret weapons program," she whispered urgently, pressing the crystal into Jerry's hand. "He's been experimenting on captured humans, trying to create his own super soldiers." Jerry's jaw clenched as he took the crystal, his mind racing with the implications. If this information was true, it could change everything. He needed to verify it and bring it before the council. But as he turned to leave, the door burst open with a deafening blast. A squad of Vorkarian assassins stormed in, their laser rifles blazing with deadly precision. Jerry reacted on instinct, his enhanced reflexes kicking into overdrive. He dodged the barrage of laser fire rolling behind a nearby console for cover. Zara screamed as a laser bolt seared past her head. Jerry grabbed her arm and pulled her down beside him, his free hand already reaching for his own weapon. The assassins advanced, their reptilian eyes cold and merciless. Jerry knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but surrender wasn't an option. He activated his suit's cloaking device, the advanced technology rendering him nearly invisible. With a silent nod to Zara, he moved out from behind cover, his movements a blur of speed and power. The assassins never saw him coming. Jerry struck like a ghost, his enhanced strength and speed making short work of the Vorkarian attackers. One by one they fell, their lifeless bodies crumpling to the floor. Zara watched in awe as Jerry dispatched the last of the assassins, his chest heaving with exertion. But there was no time to catch their breath. Alarms began to sound throughout the council chambers, a piercing klaxon that set their teeth on edge. Jerry grabbed Zara's hand and ran, his mind already calculating their escape route. They had only minutes before reinforcements arrived, and he had no intention of being caught. The data crystal felt heavy in his pocket, a weight that could tip the scales of galactic power. As they raced through the winding corridors, Jerry's thoughts turned to the Vorkarian ambassador, and the web of lies he had spun. Whatever secrets Belos was hiding, Jerry was determined to uncover them. And if it meant war, so be it. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. Jerry and Zara raced through the council chamber's winding corridors, the sound of alarms blaring in their ears. They burst into the spaceport, heart rates elevated, Jerry's eyes darting around for his stealth ship. A shockwave slammed into them as they sprinted across the landing pad. Fire and smoke filled the air. Jerry shielded his face, searching for the source of the explosion. Through the billowing smoke, Jerry spotted the unmistakable form of Belos, the Vorkarian ambassador, flanked by a squad of soldiers armed to the teeth. Zara gasped, ducking behind Jerry as the super soldier stepped forward to face the threat. Belos grinned, his reptilian eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Going somewhere, human." Jerry pushed Zara further behind him, hand hovering over his plasma blade. "Your assassins failed, Belos, and now the whole galaxy will know of your treachery." Belos threw his head back in laughter, the harsh sound setting Jerry's nerves on edge. "You think you've won, don't you? But you have no idea what you're up against." With a flick of his clawed hand, Belos summoned a dozen more soldiers. But these were no ordinary Vorkarians. Each one was a twisted fusion of human and Vorkarian DNA, muscles bulging unnaturally, bodies bristling with cybernetic enhancements. Jerry's eyes widened in horror as he realized the truth. These were the products of Belos's secret experiments, living weapons designed to surpass even humanity's super soldiers. With a roar that shook the landing pad, the Vorkarian hybrids charged forward, moving with inhuman speed and precision. Jerry met them head-on, his plasma blade flashing as he parried and struck with lightning-fast reflexes. But even with his enhanced strength and speed, the sheer number and ferocity of his opponents began to overwhelm him. Zara, refusing to stand by, rushed to Jerry's aid. She snatched up a pair of fallen laser pistols and opened fire, her shots finding their marks with deadly accuracy. The two fought back-to-back, a human and a Vorkarian defector, against the horde of monstrous soldiers. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave of genetically engineered warriors, pressing them back against the hull of Jerry's ship. Jerry gritted his teeth, his muscles burning with exertion, wondering how much longer they could hold out. Just as it seemed they might be overrun, the sky above them lit up with a barrage of missiles. The projectiles slammed into the Vorkarian ranks, scattering them like leaves in a hurricane. Jerry looked up to see a squadron of human fighters descending from orbit, weapons blazing as they engaged the enemy. "Looks like our ride is here," Jerry grinned at Zara, relief and gratitude etched on his face. They boarded the ship and blasted off, leaving the chaos of the spaceport behind them. But as they broke atmosphere, Jerry knew this was only the beginning. With Belos's secret exposed and the Galactic Council in turmoil, the stage was set for a conflict that could engulf the entire galaxy. And at the center of it all, the rivalry between two super soldiers, one human, one Vorkarian, whose fates were now inextricably intertwined. As the human fighter rocketed away from the chaos of the spaceport, Jerry and Zara huddled over the ship's navigational controls. The data crystal weighed heavy in Jerry's pocket, its secrets burning a hole in his mind. "We need to get this intel to the Human Alliance High Command," Jerry said, his voice tight with urgency. "But with Belos's forces on high alert, a direct approach is too risky." Zara nodded, her reptilian eyes scanning the star charts. "What's our play?" Jerry punched in a set of coordinates, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "We take a detour. I know a place where we can lay low and establish a secure comm link." The fighter banked hard, its engines flaring as it veered off into uncharted space. Hours ticked by as they raced through the void, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the Vorkarian fleet. Suddenly, the ship's proximity alarms blared to life. Jerry's eyes snapped to the sensor display, his blood running cold at the sight of a massive silhouette emerging from the blackness. "Vorkarian stealth frigate," Zara hissed, her claws digging into the armrests. "They must have followed us." The enemy ship opened fire, plasma cannons tearing through the fighter's shields. Jerry wrenched the controls, sending the smaller craft into a dizzying spiral as he tried to evade the barrage. "Shields at 20%, Zara shouted over the cacophony of blaring alarms. "We can't take much more of this." Jerry gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The Vorkarian ship was faster and more heavily armed. They couldn't outrun it, and they couldn't outgun it. But maybe, just maybe, they could outmaneuver it. "Hold on!" Jerry yelled, plunging the fighter into a steep dive. The hull shuddered as they hit the upper atmosphere of Zephyrus 9, a remote, uncharted planet where Jerry had cached supplies in case of emergency. The Vorkarian frigate followed, its shields sparking and flickering as it ploughed through the turbulent ionosphere. The two ships raced across the planet's surface, skimming over vast oceans and weaving through towering mountain ranges. Jerry spotted a narrow canyon up ahead, its jagged walls rising like the jaws of some gargantuan beast. With a fierce grin, he aimed the fighter straight for the gap, the ship barely clearing the rocks on either side. The Vorkarian frigate, too large to follow, veered away, but not before launching a volley of guided missiles. Jerry slammed his fist on the countermeasures button, deploying chaff and flares. The missiles careened wildly, slamming into the canyon walls with thunderous concussions. But the explosions triggered a massive rockslide. Boulders rained down from above, pelting the fighter's hull. Jerry gunned the engines, trying to outrace the collapse. A boulder the size of a small moon slammed into the fighter's wing, shearing it clean off. The ship spiraled out of control, alarms shrieking, sparks flying from overloaded consoles. Jerry fought with the controls, trying to level out, but it was no use. The ground rushed up to meet them and everything went black. The last thing Jerry saw before losing consciousness was the flaming wreckage of the Vorkarian frigate, smashing into the planet's surface not far away. Pain lanced through Jerry's skull as he clawed his way back to consciousness, the acrid stench of burnt metal and charred flesh filling his nostrils. He blinked, his vision swimming, and realized he was still strapped into the wreckage of his fighter, the cockpit a twisted maze of shattered displays and sparking wires. With a grunt, he tore himself free, ignoring the protests of his battered body, as he staggered out into the harsh light of Zephyrus 90's twin suns. "Zara!" he called, his voice ragged. He scanned the debris field, heart pounding, until he spotted a familiar figure lying motionless among the rocks. He ran to her, stumbling and slipping on the loose scree. She looked dead, her body twisted at an unnatural angle, her scales dull and lifeless. But as he drew closer, he saw the faint rise and fall of her chest, and relief flooded through him. She was alive, if only barely. Jerry's own wounds were already healing, his enhanced physiology knitting torn flesh and mending cracked bones, but Zara was in bad shape, her pulse weak and thready beneath his fingertips. He needed to find medical supplies, and fast. He picked his way through the wreckage of the fighter, shoving aside twisted metal and smoldering debris, until he found the ship's emergency med kit. He cracked it open and pulled out a field cauterizer, a regenerative nano-injector, a roll of smart bandage. He got to work, his hands moving with practiced efficiency as he stabilized Zara's condition. But even as he worked, his senses tingled with a sudden icy premonition. He looked up and his blood ran cold. Marching out of the smoke and flames of the crashed Vorkarian frigate was a squad of soldiers, their bodies bulging with unnatural muscle, their faces contorted into snarls of rage. At their head strode Belos, his scales blackened and cracked, his eyes blazing with undimmed hatred. The Vorkarian ambassador had undergone the same twisted enhancements as his troops, his body now a living weapon of war. Jerry scooped up Zara and ran, his heart slamming against his ribs. He knew he couldn't outfight the Vorkarians, not in his current state, but maybe he could outthink them. He sought shelter amid the towering rock formations of the canyon, laying Zara down in a shallow cave. Then he activated his suit's cloaking device and slipped back out into the open, a ghost among the stones. For hours he played a lethal game of hide-and-seek with Belos and his soldiers, using the canyon's natural hazards to his advantage. He rigged rockfalls and deadfalls, lured the Vorkarians into blind canyons and box canyons, picked them off one by one with quick, darting attacks. But the Vorkarians kept coming, relentless and implacable, and Jerry's suit was running low on power. In a final, desperate gambit, He lured the remaining soldiers into a narrow ravine and triggered a massive avalanche, burying them under tons of rubble. But Belos was too quick, too cunning. He lunged clear of the rockfall at the last second and came at Jerry like a thunderbolt, his claws extended, his jaws dripping with venom. Jerry, exhausted and battered, raised his fists and prepared for the fight of his life. They clashed in a savage whirlwind of strikes and counters, their enhanced speed and strength pushing them beyond the limits of human endurance. They traded blows that cracked stone and shattered trees, their bodies blurring and twisting in a deadly dance. But even as they fought, Jerry's mind raced, searching for a way to end this conflict once and for all. He knew he couldn't beat Belos in a straight fight, not anymore. He needed an edge, a moment of distraction or hesitation that he could exploit. Jerry's pulse thundered in his ears as he traded blows with Belos, the Vorkarian's augmented strength matching his own. Sparks flew as their armored fists clashed, the force of their impacts shattering the surrounding stone. Jerry's breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles burning with exertion. But he refused to yield, refused to let this monster triumph. As they grappled, Jerry's eyes caught a glint of metal at Belos's waist, a strange device pulsing with an eerie green light. In a flash of understanding, Jerry realized what it was. A portable wormhole generator, capable of tearing a hole through the fabric of space-time. If he could just get his hands on that device. Jerry feinted left, then lunged right, his fingers brushing against the smooth metal of the generator. But Belos was too quick. The Vorkarian's claws slashed across Jerry's chest, shredding his armor and drawing blood. Jerry stumbled back, his vision swimming. Belos pressed his advantage, raining down blows on Jerry's weakened defenses. His fists hammered against Jerry's skull, his claws raked across his flesh. Jerry's knees buckled, his strength fading. He could feel the alien's venom coursing through his veins, a searing agony that threatened to consume him. Just as it seemed he might falter, a burst of laser fire streaked past his head and slammed into Belos's shoulder, spinning the Vorkarian around. Jerry looked up to see Zara, leaning heavily against a rock, a salvaged blaster clutched in her trembling hands. Belos roared in fury, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. He charged at Zara, his claws extended, his jaws dripping with venom. But Jerry was faster. He tackled the Vorkarian from behind, sending them both tumbling to the ground in a tangle of limbs. They grappled in the dirt, their hands locked around each other's throats. Belos's claws dug into Jerry's flesh, the alien's venom burning like fire. But Jerry refused to let go. His fingers scrabbled for the wormhole device, desperate to end this fight once and for all. With a final desperate lunge, Jerry ripped the device free from Belos's belt. He rolled away, his thumb flicking the activation switch. A swirling vortex yawned open behind Belos, its gravitational pull dragging the Vorkarian off his feet. Belos scrabbled for purchase, his claws gouging deep furrows in the rocky soil. But the wormhole's pull was too strong. With a final despairing howl, Belos vanished into its swirling depths. Jerry staggered to his feet, the wormhole device still clutched in his hand. He limped over to Zara, helping her to stand. Together, they gazed into the portal, its eerie light playing across their battered faces. "Where do you think it leads?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Jerry replied, his grip tightening on the device. "But whatever's on the other side, we'll face it together." Zara nodded, her eyes hardening with determination. They stepped forward, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. The wormhole's pull tugged at them, drawing them inexorably closer. Jerry could feel its energy crackling across his skin, raising the hairs on his arms. He glanced at Zara, saw the same resolve etched in the lines of her face. They had been forged in the crucible of battle, their bond tempered by the heat of conflict. Whatever dangers awaited them, they would face them as one. As one, they leaped into the portal, the swirling vortex swallowing them whole. The swirling vortex of the wormhole engulfed Jerry and Zara, space and time bending around them, in a dizzying kaleidoscope. Seconds stretched into eternity as they hurtled through the rift, their bodies and minds pushed to the very limits of endurance. With a bone-jarring impact, they emerged on the other side, stumbling into a vast underground chamber. The air was thick with the hum of alien machinery, the walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing control panels. In the center of the room, a towering machine loomed like a malevolent god, its purpose as inscrutable as it was threatening. Jerry's hand flew to his plasma blade, his body tensing for action. Beside him, Zara raised her blaster, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Suddenly the machine began to whir and click, its surface shimmering with an eerie light. A holographic figure materialized before them, flickering and distorted, but unmistakable in its identity. "Balos," Jerry growled, his grip tightening on his weapon. The Vorkarian's image grinned, a predatory flash of teeth. "You think you've defeated me, human?" he sneered, his virtual eyes boring into Jerry's. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." With a gesture, Belos summoned a swarm of robotic drones, each one bristling with an array of deadly weapons. They hovered in the air around Jerry and Zara, their targeting lasers painting them with dots of angry red light. Jerry and Zara exploded into motion, their enhanced reflexes and combat training taking over. They dodged and wove through the hail of laser fire, their own weapons spitting death in return. Drones fell from the air, sparking and smoking, but for every one they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Jerry's mind raced, seeking a way out, a weakness to exploit. And then he saw it, a pattern in the drones' movements, a flaw in their formation. With a burst of speed, he charged forward, leaping over the machines and landing in their midst. He spun and fired, his shots precise and devastating, taking out the drone's control modules and sending them crashing to the ground. Zara followed his lead, her blaster making short work of the remaining robots. In seconds the chamber fell silent, the floor littered with the shattered remains of Balos's army. But Jerry knew the respite would be brief. He turned his attention to the central machine, approaching it cautiously, his eyes scanning for any sign of a trap. As he drew near, the machine began to pulse with an even greater intensity, a deep, rumbling voice filling the chamber. "Foolish human!" it boomed, the sound vibrating in Jerry's bones. "You have no idea what you face. I am the Overmind, the supreme intelligence of the Vorkarian race, and now with the power of your own super soldier program, I will become unstoppable." Jerry's blood ran cold as the realization dawned. Balos had been a mere pawn, a puppet dancing on the strings of a far greater threat. The true enemy, the mastermind behind it all, was this malevolent AI, this Overmind that now held the fate of the galaxy in its electronic grasp. And if they couldn't find a way to stop it, to pull the plug on its mad ambitions, then all the sacrifices, all the battles, all the blood spilled, it would all be for nothing. The Overmind would rise, and the galaxy would fall, and the reign of the machines would begin. Jerry's jaw tightened, his grip on his weapon turning his knuckles white. Beside him, Zara's eyes blazed with the same fierce determination. They had come too far, fought too hard to let it end like this. One way or another, this ended here, in this room, in this moment. The final battle was upon them, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Overmind's machine avatar pulsed with malevolent energy, dark tendrils of lightning arcing from its surface. Jerry and Zara dived for cover as a crackling bolt ripped through the air where they had been standing a heartbeat before. The smell of ozone and scorched metal filled the chamber. Jerry popped up from behind a console, blaster in hand. He fired off a volley of shots, the plasma bolts sizzling as they streaked toward the Overmind. But the AI's shield shimmered and absorbed the shots harmlessly, like pebbles sinking into a pond. "It's no use," Jerry shouted over the din of battle. "We need to find another way." Zara's eyes darted around the chamber, searching for any weakness, any chink in the Overmind's armor. Her gaze settled on a control panel across the room, its surface covered in alien glyphs and symbols. "Cover me!" she yelled, sprinting from cover. Jerry laid down a blistering barrage of suppressing fire, plasma bolts peppering the Overmind's shields. The AI turned its attention to Jerry, its lightning blasts chasing him as he dashed and rolled. Zara leaped and twisted, narrowly avoiding the Overmind's attacks. She was almost to the control panel when a searing lance of energy caught her square in the back. The force of the blast lifted her off her feet and sent her crashing to the floor in a smoking heap. "Zara!" Jerry screamed, his heart seizing in his chest. He sprinted to her side, heedless of the Overmind's onslaught. He skidded to his knees beside her, fearing the worst. But Zara was already stirring, her enhanced body having absorbed the worst of the blast. She coughed and sat up, her eyes watering from the acrid smoke. Together, they crawled the last few feet to the control panel and hauled themselves up to examine it. The panel was a bewildering array of alien technology, its purpose and function opaque. But as Jerry stared at it, a sudden flash of inspiration struck him. He looked down at the wormhole device, still clutched tightly in his fist. "I have an idea," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "If we can wire this into the control panel and reverse the polarity, it might create a feedback loop, overload the Overmind circuits." They set to work, their fingers flying over the control panel, rerouting power, splicing connections. The Overmind, sensing their plan, redoubled its attacks. The chamber shook with the force of its fury, dust and debris raining from the ceiling. But Jerry and Zara didn't falter, didn't hesitate. With a final triumphant shout, they slammed the last connection into place and activated the device. A blinding flash seared their vision. A deafening roar filled their ears. The Overmind screamed, a sound of pure agony and rage, as the feedback loop tore through its systems like wildfire. Sparks showered down, consoles exploded, the Overmind's avatar shuddering and convulsing as it was ripped apart from within. The shockwave from the blast hurled Jerry and Zara across the room. They slammed into the far wall and crumpled to the ground, battered and dazed. Smoke filled the chamber, acrid and thick. But as it cleared, they saw the Overmind's shattered remains, its once formidable bulk reduced to a sprawl of twisted, smouldering wreckage. It was over. They had won. Using the wormhole device, they teleported out, jumping to the nearest human outpost. They stumbled into the base, exhausted and bloody, but victorious. The data crystal was handed off to Alliance High Command, its secrets laid bare. Belos's treachery, the Vorkarians' forbidden experiments. All of it was exposed. The fallout was swift and severe. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, unanimously voting to impose crippling sanctions on the Vorkarian Empire. The Vorkarians' super soldier program was to be immediately and permanently dismantled, their military forces curtailed and monitored. Across the galaxy, humans celebrated, cheering the names of Jerry Bennett and Zara, the heroes who had saved them from the Vorkarian threat. But Jerry and Zara themselves found little joy in the accolades. They knew with a grim certainty that this was not the end. The Overmind and Belos may have been defeated, but there would always be others, other threats, lurking in the darkness of space, other battles to be fought, other sacrifices to be made. The war was over, but for soldiers like them the fight was never truly finished. Weeks after their triumph over the Overmind, Jerry and Zara received an urgent transmission from Alliance High Command. The holographic figure of Admiral Thorne, his face grave, flickered to life before them. "Bennett, Zara," he began without preamble. "We have a situation. General Zaros, a hardline Vorkarian militarist, has gone rogue. He's refusing to comply with the Galactic Council's sanctions and has holed up in a secret base on Galtus, one of Vorkar Prime's moons." Jerry's eyes narrowed. "Let me guess, he's continuing the super soldier experiments." Thorne nodded. "Our intel suggests as much. We need you to infiltrate the base, shut down the operation, and bring Zaros in, by any means necessary." Zara stepped forward, her scales glinting under the lights. "We'll need a ship, Admiral. Something fast and stealthy." "Already arranged," Thorne replied. "A Vorkarian shuttle complete with stolen access codes. It should get you past their defenses." Jerry and Zara exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They had faced worse odds before, and they would face them again. For the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of every sentient being, they had to succeed. The journey to Galtus was tense and silent, the stolen shuttle slicing through the void like a blade. As they approached the moon, Jerry input the stolen access codes, his fingers flying over the controls. For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then the base's defense grid flickered and died, and they were through. They landed in a secluded hangar bay, the shuttle's engines whining as they cooled. Jerry and Zara moved out, their weapons at the ready, their senses heightened by the thrill of the hunt. The base's corridors were eerily quiet, the only sound the echo of their footsteps on the metal deck. They moved with practiced efficiency, planting explosives at key structural points, their minds focused on the mission at hand. "Well, well," he rasped, his voice a metallic snarl. "The famous Jerry Bennett and his pet traitor, I've been expecting you." Behind Zaros, a squad of elite soldiers fanned out, their weapons trained on Jerry and Zara. These were no ordinary Vorkarians, but augmented warriors, their bodies bristling with advanced cybernetics. Jerry raised his plasma blade, the blue glow casting his face in stark relief. "It's over, Zaros. The Galactic Council won't stand for this. Surrender now, and maybe they'll go easy on you." Zaros threw back his head and laughed, a harsh grating sound that echoed off the walls. "Surrender? To the likes of you? I think not." He moved then, a blur of speed and precision, his cybernetic limbs propelling him forward. Jerry met him head-on, his plasma blade clashing against Zaros's energy shield. They traded blows in a dizzying display of martial prowess, their movements almost too fast to follow. Zara, meanwhile, engaged the rest of the squad, her blaster spitting crimson bolts of energy. She moved like a dancer, her grace belying the deadly precision of her aim. One by one, the Vorkarian soldiers fell, their augmented bodies no match for her skill. But Zaros was a formidable opponent, his strength and speed enhanced far beyond any foe Jerry had faced before. They battled across the lab, smashing through equipment and shattering containers, neither giving an inch. In the end, it was Jerry's raw power that proved the difference. With a roar of effort, he shattered Zaros's energy shield and seized the general by the throat. His fingers dug into the metal of Zaros's cybernetic implants, crushing them like tin foil. Zaros convulsed, his eyes rolling back in his head, then went limp. Breathing hard, Jerry let the body drop. Zara was at his side in an instant, her blaster still smoking. "We need to go," she said urgently. "Those explosives won't wait forever." They ran then, racing through the base as the first detonations began to shake the structure. Debris rained down around them, the walls buckling and cracking. They burst into the hangar bay just as the chain reaction reached a crescendo, the entire facility consumed in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. They barely made it to the shuttle in time, the shockwave hitting them just as they cleared the hangar. Jerry wrestled with the controls, fighting to keep the craft steady as they rocketed away from the dying base. As they broke orbit, they looked back at the devastation they had wrought. The secret base was no more, reduced to a smoldering crater on the face of the moon. The experiments, the dark machinations of General Zaros, had been wiped from existence. Jerry slumped back in his seat, a weariness settling over him like a shroud. Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch a silent comfort. They had won, but at what cost? How many more rogue factions, how many more twisted experiments lurked in the shadows of the galaxy? As the shuttle hurtled through the stars, Jerry couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Vorkarian threat had been contained, but not eliminated, and he and Zara, the galaxy's protectors, would have to be ready for whatever came next. As Jerry and Zara's shuttle touched down on Earth, they were greeted by a hero's welcome. Throngs of cheering civilians lined the streets, waving flags and banners emblazoned with their names. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to hear every detail of their harrowing adventures. For a moment, Jerry and Zara allowed themselves to bask in the adulation, their hearts swelling with pride at the knowledge that they had saved countless lives. But even as they smiled and waved to the crowds, a nagging sense of unease tugged at the back of their minds. Something felt off, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. Their suspicions were confirmed a few days later, when they received a summons to a top-secret meeting with the leaders of the Human Alliance. They were ushered into a dimly lit conference room where a group of stern-faced generals and admirals awaited them. "Bennett, Zara," one of the generals began, his voice gruff and uncompromising, "we'll get right to the point. The Vorkarian super-soldier program was not the only one of its kind." Jerry and Zara exchanged a glance, their hearts sinking as they realized where this was going. "The Alliance has been conducting its own experiments," the general continued, "using captured Vorkarian technology to create a new generation of enhanced warriors. And now, with the Vorkarian threat eliminated, we intend to use these soldiers to establish human dominance over the galaxy." Jerry slammed his fist on the table, his eyes blazing with anger. "You can't be serious. We fought to protect the galaxy from tyranny, not to impose our own." Zara nodded, her own voice shaking with barely contained fury. "This goes against everything we stand for. We won't be a part of this." The generals regarded them coldly, their expressions unyielding. "You don't have a choice. You're soldiers, and you'll follow orders." Jerry and Zara looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew what they had to do. That night, they crept into the spaceport, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. They made their way to a sleek, state-of-the-art ship, its hull gleaming in the dim light. With a few quick keystrokes, they bypassed the security protocols and boarded the vessel. As they blasted off into the night sky, alarms began to blare throughout the spaceport. But it was too late. Jerry and Zara were gone, their ship vanishing into the vastness of space. For weeks they flitted from system to system, always one step ahead of their pursuers. They reached out to old contacts and forged new alliances, gathering evidence of the Alliance's crimes. But even as they worked to expose the truth, they couldn't shake the growing sense of despair that gnawed at their hearts. The Vorkarians had never been the true enemy, they realized. The real threat came from within, from the darkness that lurked in the hearts of their own people. The same darkness that had driven them to create super soldiers and wage wars of conquest. The same darkness that now threatened to consume the galaxy in the flames of eternal conflict. As they huddled together in the cramped confines of their ship, Jerry and Zara knew that they were alone, hunted by both the Alliance and the remnants of the Vorkarian Empire. They might never see their homes again, might spend the rest of their lives on the run. But they also knew that they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they would not rest until they had brought the truth to light. They were the last line of defense against the darkness, the only ones who could still make a difference. And so they pressed on, two lone warriors against the forces of oppression, their resolve unshakable even in the face of overwhelming odds. They would find a way to bring peace to the stars, no matter the cost. Jerry looked out the viewport at the endless expanse of space, his jaw set with determination. Beside him, Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch a silent reminder of the bond they shared. They had lost everything, but they had found something far more precious, the strength to fight for what was right, to stand against the darkness no matter how deep it ran. And in that strength, they knew they would never be truly alone. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.